Alright, what's up guys, and welcome back for yet another twink video, this time for the level 10 Resto Druid Catweave build. This won't be a long intro, just like any of my other guides, so let's just jump straight into it. So before I officially start the best in slot guide itself, I do want to have a few disclaimers or things that I want to mention basically that I've caught from previous videos in the comments and feedback. So to start this off, Shadowlands, okay? Anything Shadowlands related that you want loot-wise, so that means the Ooze trinket or the rings from Necrotic Wake, you need to make sure that you do not skip Ouroboros for this, all right? There may be other issues that are happening, but the most common one is that players are skipping them all, which is okay, but then they're also skipping Ouroboros, which is not okay. Do not skip Ouroboros. If you do, your loot will show a requirement of level 50 and essentially will brick your character, and you will need others to loot and trade to you if you have skipped it. And for our second disclaimer of the guide, Tanaan jungle in Warlords of Draenor. Now, there are some pieces that I didn't even link in this guide, by the way, but I'm aware that there are options out there in Tanaan jungle. Those of you that do opt to go that route, you cannot get it to scale to your level. They are flat rate eye level 44 drops. However, the mobs will not scale to you. You will need a max level to run with you, kill it, and then trade it to you when it drops. Some of these options would be, or two options here. If you already have a garrison hearth, you can skip most of this and just make sure you're not chromie time walking to that area and just garrison hearth there. Your max level also obviously should not be in chromie time walk, and then they can fly you around and kill the mobs. The other way is if you don't have garrison unlocked, you can go to Ashran when you're time walked, set your hearth there, go back to chromie, revert timeline, then hearth, and then your max level can fly you around and kill the mobs and loot them for you. Now on to our third disclaimer. I apologize, guys, but I just wanted to make sure this was very thorough. Our third disclaimer, however, is for Dragonflight. Now, I have never had this problem because I play each expansion as it comes out. You, however, might be a free-to-play player, 100% free-to-play, or someone who skipped the expansion. If this is either of you, you will not be able to have the Amnesia neck, the mob that drops it, to scale to your level. It's going to show up as a skull. And that's because you need to complete the campaign on a higher level character prior to being able to have like a low level character chroming timeline there, and then everything starts to scale in those areas. But essentially, adventure mode is what you need unlocked for those characters. If you go to the mob and it shows as a skull, this might be why. Now, for our last disclaimer before we move on to the actual gear pieces would be about the infinitely divisible Ooze. This one is a common question that pops up in the comments, threads, Discord, etc. And I can understand why. When you have the Ooze and you've already unlocked it, you have it on your character, you will not have it be brokenly OP unless you are queuing for content older than Warlords of Draenor and you are staying in the current timeline. So the way this works is you would essentially queue for Burning Crusade. And when you're talking to Chromie to set your timeline there and then queuing, right after you queue, I pretty much just revert my timeline immediately, remain in the queue, and then I'm set. My slime will be OP in that content. Now, if I were to queue for Burning Crusade and remain in that timeline and never revert it, the slime will not be OP. Additionally, if there's event-related time walking queues, like right now it is Warlords of Draenor, conveniently enough, it will not be OP in that. And just like before, a couple weeks ago, it was Classic and also Mist of Pandaria. In those event-related queues, they will never be OP. Using a different trinket during those times if you want to run those. All right, now let's start this off with stat priority. Basically, for this one, you're going to want a lot of int, more int and as much int as you can possibly get. Your goal here is going to be to maximize how many gem slots you can have, just to pop another int gem in there. Now for secondary stats, I didn't really worry about them, but I would not go for anything with mastery. Mastery is useless for this. It does not work for you. It benefits only healing, nothing else. But haste will help with your gullible cooldown, and versatility will help with your overall damage. And crit's always good too. I kind of balanced it out a little bit inadvertently. I didn't intentionally do it. It's just the gear kind of landed that way because my gems were strictly int. Nothing else outside of the speed related stats. All right, so on to our first set of gear. For your best in slot helm, there are two options. Really, neither are right or wrong. It's just your preference of which one you would like. One has a meta gem, one does not. The first one would be the Cenarian Refuge in Zangarmarsh. You're going to do a quest called Umbrafen Tribe, which is given by Ikean. Once you complete that one, Lorana will allow you to do the quest Saving the Sporlocks, which rewards the Scout's Hood with 3 sockets. The second option is the Helm of Anomalous from the Nexus, and that would be your meta gem option. On to shoulders, you have your best in slot option would be the drop from the last boss in the Slay Pens, the Mana Etched Spalders. Now, this is the cloth piece. You will need either an alt or a friend at level 10 to run with you to loot this and trade it to you. And the reason this is best in slot compared to the other option here is because it gives more int. And then you still have, and you also have 2 sockets instead of 1. Now, for a placeholder, I would go for the Spalders of the Careless Thief, which drops off the Grand Magus Telestra in the Nexus. I believe you would most likely get this one while you're also trying to farm the Meta Helm option if you went that route. Now, for your best in slot chest, I would opt for the Tunic of the Night Watcher. I did this because it has more versatility overall. However, you don't have to if you don't want to. I went the approach of Glass Cannon, just maximize as much int, verse, and haste that I could. That doesn't necessarily mean that you absolutely have to do this to be brokenly OP. If you feel like you're squishier, go for the Raiments of Divine Authority. However, if you go that route, you will need a cloth person to run with you, loot it, and trade it to you. Now, for hands best in slot, I went for yet another cloth piece for the actual best in slot. And the reason I went this route for Mana Etched Gloves is because it has 1 more intellect on it, but the same amount of sockets, which means that you maximize more int. Overall, just better. Now, this drops from Omor the Unscarred in Hellfire Ramparts, and you will need a cloth person to run with you and loot and trade it to you. Now, for placeholder, I would go for the Deft Handguards, which drops off the last boss in Slay Pens. Now, for wrist, there wasn't anything that I could find that was worthwhile to chase after. However, anything in BC that you're currently running for other pieces of gear can proc a socket. So in a perfect world, you're going to want to aim for an eye level 24 wrist piece that drops in any of the Burning Crusade dungeons and hope that it procs a socket. If that happens, that'll be more int than the placeholder option, which is to go for a Time Ward piece at eye level 56. Now, for your belt, we have yet another cloth piece as our actual best in slot. And the reason being is that the bonus stats add up to be better than the leather counterpart. This one drops from Keladon the Breaker in the Blood Furnace by the name of Mindfire Waistband. You'll need a clothy to run with you and loot it and trade to you. Just as an additional note, the drop rate on this seems abysmal, so good luck for this one. However, for your placeholder, which drops from Rockmar the Crackler in the Slay Pens, is the Liar's Cord. And the reason I would not opt this one as your actual best in slot is because it gives you dodge. You really don't need that. Now, moving on to legs, your best in slot and placeholder both drop from the same boss in the Blood Furnace. However, you're going to want to go for the Moonchild leggings, mainly because it gives more stats, and it's just all around better. But if you can't manage to get this on the drop, which it took me a few times, Kilt of the Night Strider is okay as a placeholder. Moving on to feet, this one would be Swamp Runner's Boots. This drops as a quest in Zanger Marsh. Whether you're Horde or Alliance, listed here is where you would actually pick them up from. Now, this can proc Epic. However, I don't think I've ever gotten any of them to proc for me, so I probably just have horrible luck with this. Let me know if you guys managed to get these things to ever proc for you down in the comments. For your back piece or cloak, whichever you prefer to call it, I would go for a Time Lord piece. And that's mainly because of my preference, not necessarily that it's the actual best in the slot. I just think going to Tanaan jungle is a pain in the butt, so I don't do it. Now, if you opt that route, make sure you refer to the earlier disclaimer above of how you can get them to properly drop for you. But there are options there that can proc sockets so that you could have an actual cloak that's eye level 44 and have a socket. So there is that. For your weapon and offhand, you're going to want to go to the route of main hand offhand, mainly because the combination of enchants and using a main hand offhand combination will give you the most intellect compared to a two-hander. Just avoid mastery on those weapons and you're pretty much good to go. I do know that there's weapons in offhands if classic comes into the rotation for a classic event time walking. However, that's not currently out, so I was unable to get those weapons. But if Classic does come out, I think it's in Skullments? Yeah, it's like the Book of the Dead. Whatever it's called, the Book of the Dead. It summons more ads. I'm actually curious to try that out when that comes back into rotation. Moving on to your neck piece, which is the exact same for every twink. So if you have listened to any of my other guides, you already know what this is. But for those of you that are new, this is the Amnesia neck piece, which drops in the Azure Span and Dragonflight. You're going to need to head over to this point on the map. Make sure that you are time walking in Chromie time for this area. And verify that the mob actually does not show as a skull. If it shows as a skull, refer to my message disclaimer about Dragonflight and make sure you correct it before you come back. But in the event that you're able to get it, you'll need to also get some tiered medallion settings, 2 of the 2-star, 1 of the 3-star, and that will give you 3 sockets on this neck piece. Now, unlike some of the other twinks that you have options for trinkets, this one, there are 2 just straight out trinkets that you want to get. The only time that this is different is if you're running event related content. Like I mentioned before, you'll want to swap out the Ooze because it won't be OP in event related time walking. However, the first choice is going to be the infinitely divisible Ooze. This drops off the final boss in Plaguefall. Make sure that you're time walking, and if you're having issues with the loot drops, make sure you refer to my message above about the disclaimer with Shadowlands and verify that you did not skip Ouroboros, okay? Also, this only drops for Agi and Int users, so you may need to be either a class that has that as a primary stat, or you may need to change from healing spec to DPS to have it to drop. If you are, say, like a warrior, I know this is a guide about cats, but just in the event that you're listening and you're like, oh, I'm going to try it on this one. If you're a strength user, like warrior, DK, etc., you will need someone else to run with you that can get it to drop and trade it to you. And for trinket number 2, that would be the Balefire Branch. I know the screenshot doesn't display the correct information here. However, what this thing does is it's an on-use ability. It gives you plus 100 int for that time frame that does specify there for 20 seconds. If you take damage, though, it does stop. If you take no damage, it decays over time during that 20-second time. It has a 1 minute 30-second cooldown, and it is dropped from the last boss in Waycrest Manor. Just as a side note, if you're a Horde player and you need to get there to solo it, you will probably need to do the trick of just hopping into the upper crow's nest area of the ship that's in Stormwind that heads to the area. And then once you port over there, fly to the dungeon. The only other way is to do the questing as a Horde player to unlock the quest with the boat to travel to each area. However, I do know some people have issues with that, myself included, where it did not actually populate the quest, and I couldn't figure out why. So the Crow's Nest boat trick worked for me. If you're Alliance, you could just fly over there. Now, for rings, it's more or less the same as every other twink out there. You can opt for eye level 56 rings from Time Warped and just make sure it doesn't have mastery on it, and you're good to go to hold you over in the meantime. From there, you have two directions you can take. I think ultimately you still want to go Mechagon rings long term. However, it's a time sink, and I know it takes a while. So option number 2 is to do, currently right now, Mythic Plus rotation has Necrotic Wake, so you're able to go in there, get those rings to drop, and then get 2 Magnificent Jeweler settings per ring, and it gives you the option to put 2 more gems on those. Now, again, if you're having trouble with the loot and it's showing the wrong requirements, refer to my disclaimer about Shadowlands to make sure that you did not skip Ouroboros. If you have, you will need someone at the same level as you to get it to drop and trade it to you to be able to do the same trick. But long term, you do want to go for Mechagon for your rings. Now, moving on to our gems, we have the doublets. Just like every other twink out there, you're going to use 1 of each in your entire gear set. This time, I've left out the Mastery Cluster because, well, it's useless stat. You don't want to put those on there, so I'm not even going to put that in this guide. However, there is a Mastery Cluster out there. But with the amount of gems you'll need, you'll probably end up in a situation where you realistically only use the haste and versatility, because you don't need very many to reach the 49% threshold on a level 10. But you're going to use these clusters until you hit 49% on this particular twink at level 10, and it being the cat. Yes, you do want to max out your speed, so put those in until you reach 49%. And on a side note, if you have a piece of gear with more than 1 gem socket in it and you're trying to increase the speed and health regen from the doublets, you cannot put 3 of the same cluster in that piece of gear. So that is why I have listed 3 here, because if you reach a situation like that, you're going to want to put 1 of each in that piece of gear to have it add the HP regen and speed. I don't know if that's a bug or intentional, but if you were to say put 3 of the versatility in there, it would only register 1 and only give you 15 speed. And how it says, you know, it gives you 15 per gem, it for some reason doesn't register the other 2 after that. So mix and match until you reach 49%. And then once you reach 49%, you're literally just going to stack Brilliant Ornate Rubies. It says it gives +4, and it actually does give you +4 int in your sockets. This is going to be your bread and butter right here to make you extremely overpowered. You want as much int, and this is going to get you there. These can be purchased in the AH, or they can be purchased for 1 Mark of Honor from the PvP vendors that are located in your cities. Now, if you went the Helm with the meta gems, I know I didn't actually show anything here. However, there are a lot of meta gem options that you can use if you went the Helm of Anomalous route. Now, moving on to enchants. Before I list these off, I know there was 1 enchant that I neglected to add on here, and that would be the Machinist Brilliance, which gives the intellect to the main hand. I would go for that too. I personally went Elemental Force just to test it out. It's working. Maybe Machinist Brilliance would be better because we did do the main hand offhand. So you guys can experiment with it and let me know what you think about that. Now, for those of you that are diehard Lifesteal fans, Lifesteal doesn't proc for crap for a druid, so it's essentially useless on a druid. It doesn't proc the same way it does on a Fury Warrior. So if you're coming from a Fury Warrior and you're like, yeah, Lifesteal, no, it's not going to work on a druid. Sorry. Now everything else basically maximized int or haste, and then you have some of the common ones that you see across all twinks: the minor speed on boots and the hidden satyr on neck. Now, let's talk a little bit about socket and stat procs for gear. When you're running in Burning Crusade and trying to get your socketed gear, just in general, so you can start becoming overpowered on your twink, there is a small chance that that gear can proc a stat like Leech, Speed, Avoidance, Indestructible. Some of them are useless, some of them are not. Also, some of them can proc sockets. Now, a piece of gear can have a maximum amount of 3 sockets. And they can only proc 1 additional socket if it doesn't already have the maximum amount, right? So, for example, if a wrist drops and it normally has no sockets, it has a chance. It can proc a socket. I've had it happen. Same with the belts. Like, for example, the Liar's Cord that drops. It usually has 2. My Monk has one with 3. It has the one with 3, and it has Leech on it at the same time. So it can proc both. But you have to be extremely lucky for that to happen. So do keep that in mind. All right, now we're going to start off with some professions. So with leatherworking, disclaimer, it has nothing intellect based for this build. However, it does give additional stats with what it also gives as a primary. So we're not going to really do this for the primary stats. We're going to do it for the secondary stats because you have no other choice. Tailoring, leg enchants require level 27, so you can't even use those. I tried so that you do not have to. Chances are most of you already knew that to begin with by just reading, and I failed to. So there you go, guys. But you can still put these on there, even though they have agi, strength, whatever, because of these secondary stats that come with that primary stat. So I would still put this on your druid because you can put it on there and then drop the profession and pick up a different profession and have the secondary stats from that leg chant at the very least, right? So it's still good to go for. Moving on to alchemy, this would give you a permanent flask that you can continually pop. And being an alchemist also increases the duration of those, which would give you, actually this one would give you 4 hours. I know it says 2 hours, but that's because it gives you 2 hours. I think it doubles it. So you get 4 hours of a +4 stat. So in this case, it would be intellect. So 4 more. And what do we need for this? More int. So this is perfect for us. This requires the items that you see here, and it needs 7 of each and 1 of the vials. And you also need to level alchemy to 300 in classic alchemy to be able to craft this. But this would be a profession that you would want to level and keep because you can't use it otherwise. Now, moving on to my favorite one for all twinks is engineering. And for engineering, you mainly do it for these 2 options here. It would be the Nitro Boost or the Frag Belt. I personally prefer the Boost, just for, faster speed clears. These require 1 Tinker Kit per enchant that you do. The Boosts require level 30 in Northrend Engineering, and the Frag Belt requires level 5 in Northrend Engineering. These are all around amazing to have on your twinks. So I made a consumable list. Now, this doesn't mean that this is the all or nothing, all-encompassing list of your only choices or the best choices. It's just I grabbed some food items just to kind of give you an idea that I figured would be easy to farm. We have plenty of lions to kill in the game. We have plenty of wolves to kill in the game. So if you're free to play, you can get this. You can craft it yourself. You can get it from the quest, or if you're, and I also listed both Alliance and Horde, so you have options on whether you're Alliance or Horde. Now, the Mage Weave bandage, obviously, that's easy enough. You just level up to get that, or you could buy them. A lot of people post them on there. You can buy them yourself. It does 81 to 82 per tick on the HP regen, so I don't know if it actually gives you 600. I popped it, and 82 for 8 seconds doesn't really add up to 600. So maybe the scaling is a little different on that for level 10. Who knows? The super healing potions are also really good. And I think that these are items that you probably want to carry with your druid because it's a little bit squishier than its guardian druid counterpart, right? Now, if you didn't do alchemy, you can purchase the elixir of wisdom. But to be honest, I would highly recommend you do alchemy and it just all around helps you out and has the 4 stats for 4 hours. For our talent tree, we are level 10, so we're really limited. We don't have much of a choice. So I went for Rake. Do I use Rake a lot? Not really. I didn't see anything worthwhile to grab, so that's just what I clicked just to get rid of that stupid alert at the bottom. If I could get away with not picking anything, I would have, because there's nothing there at level 10 that you really are going to use. Now, for your abilities, obviously Mark of the Wild. If anyone's ever played a druid, a lot of people are going to be like, why is this even listed here? I'm doing this in case someone is absolutely brand new. So if you're not brand new, you don't need to pay any mind to this. But if you are brand new and have been living under a rock for the past 20 years that this game has been out, but jokes aside, Mark of the Wild, you're going to buff that at the beginning because it gives you more versatility. I would highly recommend that your cat form be keybound so that when you're hotting yourself with rejuvenation, you can quickly change back into cat form. Your main single target damage is obviously going to be Shred and Ferocious Bite, especially on bosses. You nuke them with that. Then your AoE swipe, once you have enough intellect stacked on this bad boy, your swipe is actually going to kill packs with 2 of them. 2 swipes, entire packs dead. Super quick. And lastly, well, not technically not lastly, but the last part of my actual guide itself. My thoughts on this class initially when I was gearing it up, extremely squishy. Now that it is geared, still slightly squishy, but things die faster than they can kill me. So that's always good. I categorize twinks in these 3 categories roughly. With a little bit of wiggle room here and there. W twinks, basically because you hold W down and you don't have to care about anything. Everything dies. So you just breathe on them and they're dead. Then there's like the boss twinks because they are crap at everything but killing bosses because their abilities don't really have any AoE. That would typically be like the Destro Lock or maybe I don't know, mages after the eye level squish. We'll have to test that on another video. But this one kind of falls under a hybrid between the 2. And the only reason I say that is because it can die if you overpull, right? So you can't just literally hold W and not care. But they do kill ads really quick, and they also nuke the bosses much, much faster than its Guardian counterpart. So this is a very, very strong class, and it actually is faster than the Fury Warrior. Once you have your speed maxed out and the passive like speed increase from being a cat, I mean, there's been Fury Warriors that are trying to keep up with me because you have that static speed increase the entire time, whereas they get their speed increase when things are dying. So the damage on this is crazy high, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Now, to wrap up my video here, I hope, okay, fingers crossed here, I hope that I didn't forget anything. Now, I only say that because if you guys watch my Guardian Druid video, I actually forgot the feat in that guide. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. But as always, I'm not, you know, I'm very thick-skinned. I don't get offended easily. I actually am very open to feedback and support from you guys. So if I did miss anything, please let me know. I do intend to document all this, and as I get more feedback, I'll alter my guide slightly to provide the information you guys are looking for. And over time, I'll cycle through my other guides and fix them and improve them each time, okay? I do appreciate all of you, and I am extremely thankful that all of you are supporting me in the way that you guys are by watching my videos. I will also be going live more often in between my guides when I'm gearing out new ones, and I look forward to seeing you guys there as well. But as always, guys, thank you, and I appreciate you all very, very much. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, week, month, however long it takes till the next video, and take it easy.